which is CD Projekt Red. And CD Projekt Red
Yes.
blew up Twitter yesterday. I mean, blew it up loud because they didn't announce not one, not two, but four new projects coming down the pipe. So first off, they have Codename Orion, which is going to be the next Cyberpunk game. I'm presuming a sequel to Cyberpunk 2077.
Mm-hmm. Well, and so it's weird because I've heard that it's a sequel, but I've also heard people referring to it like an expansion pack that is like a sequel.
So again, nobody really knows.
Yeah.
The way that this announcement is worded, whoops, I would presume that it's a sequel. That's what I'm guessing.
Okay.
Because they say our next Cyberpunk game, right? Now, they have been releasing slowly DLC. All the DLC for 2077 thus far and going forward through the rest of 2077's lifespan will be free to play. They are not charging for the DLC packs that they're pushing out for 2077. So this looks like it's a new game. Now, if they build it on the same engine and kind of stick to it, I think they'll have less issues than they did last time. But I think a lot of those issues stemmed from the fact that they were trying to also backdate it to the last generation's consoles, which I think was we've covered on the show before, was a terrible mistake.
Yeah, for sure.
And then the next thing they announced was not one, not two, but 3 games.
New trilogy. Yeah.
Inside of The Witcher, right? So they have Polaris, which is the code name for the next installment in the Witcher series. So I think that's going to be Witcher 4, right? Mm-hmm. 2 more Witcher games after Polaris, creating a new trilogy. So this is going to push them through Witcher 6 for another trilogy. Then they have Canis Majoris, which is a full-fledged Witcher game, but separate from that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And then they have, so I'm guessing a different main character or something. And then they have Sirius, which is set in the Witcher universe, and also will be offering multiplayer gameplay, on top of single-player experience, including with a campaign with quests and a story. And then finally, Hadar is a codename for a third entirely distinct IP created from scratch within CDPR, which means this is not a license. So Witcher and Cyberpunk are both licensed IPs. Yep. This, they're saying, is new and it's developed by them.
I mean, will be interesting to see how this plays out. Of course, this is over a number of years now. So, I mean, we're not going to, some of this stuff is going to be a few years out. Yeah, a ways out. Right. But CD Projekt Red, I mean, certainly they stumbled with Cyberpunk, but
a little bit.
The quality of work that they've done in the past and what they've done has certainly, at least with me, bought them enough goodwill that I'm cautiously optimistic about like the new titles coming out.
So some folks in the chat saying they love the Witcher games. Tell us what you want. Like, what do you want, chat, out of new Witcher games? Because I'm like, how big of a Witcher guy are you, Michael?
So I have played the Witcher 1, Witcher 2, and Witcher 3.
Okay.
I have never beaten any of them.
They are long games.
They are long games. And it was never a question of length for me as far as the games were concerned. At the time that the first Witcher came out and even the sequel came out, part of it was performance. I was trying to play them on PC, and my computer at the time was not really, was not quite up to snuff for performance.
Okay.
So that, especially in an action-oriented game, you start getting frame rate drops, and, that becomes a level of frustration that becomes hard to deal with.
Yes.
I always liked the story. I liked the characters. I thought the writing was smart, or the writing was clever. So, and again, Witcher 3 certainly has had a nice long shelf life. Over multiple console iterations and such. So, it's about time they bring forward a new game. I'm curious to see how they dig into the storyline, and if if at all, it will be any kind of tie-in with the Netflix series.
Oh, I didn't even think. Well, because the Netflix series, like,
but
it's still Geralt.
The Netflix series also, again, there's also a spin-off series coming as well, and they've done an anime that was a spin-off anime.
So this is another one of those weird ones that reminds me of Edge Runners, right? Because is the show based on the game, or is the show more based on the original source material?
See, I feel like, and I have not watched Edge Runners in entirety yet. I've watched the trailer. I've watched a little bit of it. The vibe I got from Edge Runners was that it was very much, it was based on the game, but also on the system, but mostly they were trying to tie into the familiarity of the game.
Okay.
Like people, they were hoping, people know Cyberpunk because of this game, so they'll want to watch the anime.
Right.
And I think it was much less based on the fact that Cyberpunk was a successful role-playing game, tabletop role-playing game that people are familiar with.
Okay. So chat's saying they would love to see one that takes a place when the Witchers weren't hated and were at the height of their power.
I think the challenge for that becomes that then, are you playing? Would that storyline basically have to take you through the downfall of the Witchers?
Ooh, but that might be fun.
Because, and the games have given you like little tidbits,
right?
Pieces of that, as far as like they would sometimes. I know in the first game, for example, there were a couple of flashbacks to the kind of the end of the Witchers, right? Like that type of thing happened.
Yeah.
But they didn't cover it in detail, certainly. I don't know. When you talk about Witchers, you're talking about like characters that are in their universe. Aside from like the mages, they were kind of all powerful. Like,
right.
The only reason Witchers didn't rise up and like take control of everything is because there just weren't enough of them.
Okay.
Really, even at the Witcher's height, there weren't a lot of Witchers. It wasn't like there was like a nation of Witchers. So I'm curious how much story there would be to that, and if the only way to make that type of story overly interesting, other than like it being an anthology of different like adventures of individual Witchers, which would be kind of neat. Would be to show like the Witchers being kind of betrayed and the downfall of the Witchers.
That could be interesting. Chat's saying that they think that starting to do it that way, like starting at the height and then opening a door to a sequel where it all falls apart, showing them get betrayed, that would be neat. Obviously CDPR very much believes in this IP.
For sure.
They're like, all right, we're not doing just one. We're doing a whole bunch of Witcher. You're going to get all the Witcher. I'll be honest, I have not been as big a fan of the Witcher games. I have struggled mightily for a little while now with fantasy products. Anything that's like medieval fantasy, like, has got to do a lot to win me over. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Tell me why I care. You know what I mean? Like, I really do. I very much enjoyed Cyberpunk 2077, though.
Well, and again, when you look back to fantasy storylines, right? Like, there are so many of them are so cliched and so tropey. Again, like you go look to your Skyrims. Like, how many games that you go into are you the chosen one, right? Or you are the person that's gonna bring some kind of balance or right or wrong. Even like the Dragon Age games, right? I mean, again, they do a good job of trying to put you in the shoes of someone who is kind of drawn into this larger conflict. But at the end of the day, it still feels like, you were meant to do this. Like, everything revolves around you and your character.
Which is very much The Witcher as well. Like the Witcher series, right?
Yeah. Which, again, the way The Witcher kind of is portrayed, you were talking about a character who is, infamous and legendary. Like,
Yeah.
So,
Geralt's not a nobody.
Sense. But I think what I'm hearing though is like, again, like when I look at fantasy games, I'm kind of in the same boat. Like I love fantasy games, but it also takes a lot for me to get drawn into a fantasy game anymore. And it might be because of that simple fact. Like I there are so many storylines I'm just kind of tired of playing through
Mm-hmm.
as a video game, right?
Yeah.
Um,
I,
and
I
I
even
think,
struggle with those in tabletop RPGs, right? Like, and I run, a huge D&D like community. Uh, Now, one of my goals there has always been to break as many of the classic D&D tropes as possible, right?
Mhm.
And we've been largely successful at that. But yeah, I mean that's where it struggled with me. One of the things I loved about Cyberpunk is that V was not the chosen one. V was taken advantage of, lied to, and ended up getting screwed over because they weren't the chosen one, right? It was an accident, you know. And I
Mhm.
love the way how that kind of like starts is how are you gonna go and deal with this extraordinary situation that you got put into?
Well, yeah, and Cyberpunk does a good job of dealing with what again happens in a lot of Cyberpunk level games, which is where the story starts small, your character starts small, kind of a small fish in a very big pond, and through through jobs and misadventures and gaining of reputation, like things change. There is a change, and I liked that in Cyberpunk. Like you start again kind of like a nobody, and then the game, through the mission setups and then also through the way it does its time shifts, like there are, clearly you go from being like a nobody to like, there's a short cutscene and suddenly like you're kind of rocking some pretty decent gear and like you're doing pretty well and getting better jobs. And you know um that's like a progression that happens in specifically in like sci-fi games much more frequently, and I would say it is usually portrayed better than in other types of games, in modern games or in fantasy games.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I mean, I'm excited to see what CD Projekt Red does here.
Mhm.
Again, launch issues aside, if you haven't played Cyberpunk 2077 lately, I highly recommend jumping back into our audience because they have made some distinct improvements and there's so much more stuff to do now. Like they've added a bunch and there is a new DLC coming that
Mhm.
looks pretty good. And good on CD Projekt Red for not charging for DLC, right? Good on them
Well, I
for
mean,
just being like, here you go.
dude, with all of the bad press that they took for the release, the botched release, and all the problems that happened at launch, I mean, I look at this as a situation like what happened with No Man's Sky and Hello Games, right? Like Hello Games, literally, when No Man's Sky launched, you basically that game was dead on arrival.
See, the funny thing is
With all of the hype, um,
there was
you
a lot
know,
of hype. I liked No Man's Sky when it first dropped.
mhm,
My big thing is I was like, this isn't a video game. It's like it's an experience. It's like
mhm.
like zone out and go explore these new worlds. Like it was neat.
And again, I look to Hello Games as like, again, they took this game that was basically dead on arrival,
Yeah,
and they resuscitated the bejesus out of it, and were able to bring it up to not only what they were promising at launch, but then to go so far beyond. And they've
for
provided
sure.
so much support and growth for that game. I mean, I don't know anybody who has played No Man's Sky within the last year or two and has not been like just blown away by just the game, like the what they've done with the game now, and
See,
the things that they've offered for free. You know,
yeah, that actually makes me want to go back in because that's actually a game I've been meaning to revisit. Was No Man's Sky.
I mean, and again, I can speak to this. I recently revisited it myself. The the fleet mechanics they've built in there, the exploration mechanics. There's so much more to the game. There's so much more meat on its bones. There's actually like kind of storylines, and there's things to do in the
Okay.
game now, more so than it was more just an exploration and base building game really before. It's a lot more now.
Oh,
Um,
yeah. I may have to revisit that one.
There's a small, and again, I am a collector. I'm a cosmetics type of guy in a game. I'll take forever in character creation. I'll find just the right palette of things for the clothing.
Oh God, how long did you spend at Cyberpunk's character creator?
No, let's not talk about it. But what I found awesome about No Man's Sky in the current iteration for sure is that you can, especially when you start building out like fleets, you can start collecting starships. So you can have a fleet of like ships that you're switching between for different purposes. And which also makes, again, me being the type of person that is a collector, I'm like, ooh, I like that ship. I got to find that one. Oh, that ship's awesome. I'll be standing inside a space station and somebody will land their ship and I'll be running up like, okay, I want to buy that. Like, just how much for your ship? Like,
see, yeah,
give it to me. Give it to me now.
Yeah. I'm a hoarder in video games. Like, I'm one of those people that like goes through a game and is reticent. Like, I never sell stuff back to vendors. I'm always like, there must be some reason that I need this item later, right? I was the one that was consistently overburdened in Fallout 4.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like same thing. Yeah, any Fallout, Skyrim, like any game that uses an encumbrance module.
Yeah, I'm just screwed. Yep, completely.
Same.
So there you go. CD Projekt Red. They haven't died. They're coming back strong, and they're probably stronger than I have. I've never seen them announce 4 games at once. So that's hectic. So good for you, CD Projekt Red. I can't wait to see what you come up with.
To borrow the catchphrase from, or the tag from Virginia Slims, you've come a long way, baby.
You have, very much. All right, and so that is the end of topic number 2 there. But that brings us to topic number 3, which is related. So there is a really interesting article over on IGN, and they are saying that the running tally this year of games that have been delayed from 2022 into 2023 is 60. 60 stinking games. I'm going to touch on a couple of these that like I was really looking forward to. Suicide Squad killed the Justice League. I don't care about Halo. I don't care.
I do care about Halo, but I've grown weary.
Weary, yes. The next Legend is Zelda. The sequel to Breath of the Wild has been delayed from 2022 into 2023. Starfield, which I was really looking forward to, from Bethesda, has been delayed into first half of 2023, whatever that means. Kerbal Space Program 2. There was another couple. Star Wars Hunters.
Hunters. I went down the list, and to be fair, other than kind of like the big name delays, most of it was kind of like indie games I hadn't been paying a whole lot of attention to. So to see delays, I wasn't completely surprised.
Yeah. Marvel's Midnight Suns, which I was also looking forward to, because I love Ghost Rider.
Yep, that did get a bump, and again, that type of the Midnight Suns, like that goes back to like those Ultimate Alliance games that they had. Those kind of isometric, like you had a team of 4 and they have synergies and again, you talk about customization, and I was a big Marvel nerd, so like I'd love to get those games and just try and collect every single like comic book reference outfit that they had available and all the different gear. It was like a mini RPG as well.
Yeah, that's why I'm looking forward to Midnight Suns. Plus, it's got one of my favorite Marvel characters, Ghost Rider. I love Ghost Rider. Okay, not to be confused with the PBS show from the mid 1990s, Ghost Writer, right? Which was also a very good show. Okay, so here's the question that I have for you on this particular topic.
Okay,
with especially some of these big name delays, like Starfield, like Midnight Suns, like Legends of Zelda. How much of this is the game companies going, we can't launch half-baked products anymore? How much of it is basically what I'm calling the post-COVID delay, right? We've had a lot of games and movies that got started pre-COVID. Everything kind of slowed down, and like while production picked up kind of at the end of 2021, beginning of 2022, there's still like a lot of pushback. So how much of this is COVID delay, and how much of this is them not wanting to put out half-baked products. And hang on, I'm gonna yell at this dog right now. Bad puppy, what are you doing? Don't fight in here. Hang on 1 second.
You're fine.
Come here, puppies. Come on.
Dogs are fun, right? Chat, dogs are great. Dogs are great. We can all agree dogs are great.
I'm not sure how they opened the door to the studio, and I thought that maybe they were going to be quiet, but apparently not.
That's all right. That's all right.
So
how much of this is post-COVID delay? How much of this is due to possible
bad press?
Possible bad press. I would love to say that it's game companies being responsible and saying we don't want to release half-baked product, but I have a feeling that it is more a 50-50 mix. I think there's a lot of this still has to do with delays, post-COVID resources, post-COVID production. Like, I feel like there's still things that we're still lagging behind on. And I think this is just I think we're going to see this for the next year. I think into 2023, we're going to see these things still occurring.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But I also think that there's a part of this that is the companies themselves, and especially when you look at these smaller indie companies, the smaller companies, they can't afford to release when you look at the sheer amount of games that are coming out, indie games especially, that are coming out and going like direct to Game Pass, direct to like the PlayStation Plus services, like
Epic.
They're getting Epic, so all these games are getting released and they're going right into a streaming service. They're not even necessarily being released to retail per se right away. There's a real danger of your product being swallowed completely if it is in any way mediocre, or less than polished. So I especially understand it for the indie companies. If we can push off for a couple more months and release a product that is, going out the door as good as we can possibly make it, if we can float 3 more months, if we can float 6 more months, let's do it and put the work in.
Yeah.
For the larger companies, I think it literally is just it's the risk of being the next Cyberpunk.
You don't want that launch.
Yeah, no, you don't want that launch at all.
Which is funny because like Bethesda. Now Bethesda, the last time they launched something, they were their own company. Now they're under Microsoft, and Microsoft is known for their QA standards. And so I wonder how much of that delay is also Microsoft being like, yeah, you're not doing that anymore. Bethesda bugs are legendary, especially for, Fallout games.
With Bethesda, it might just be like, how long can we push out this the Starfield? How many more versions of Skyrim can we release before we have to put this product on the market?
Oh, at least 3 more Skyrims. At least. Yeah.
At least 3 more Skyrims.
At least 3 more. Somebody in the chat's pointing out that the Cyberpunk expansion delay is certainly a human malware, which is what we're referring to the pandemic as, related event. I would agree with that. That's definitely human malware, especially since Europe, most of Europe was much more stringent about their lockdown policies than the United States was. So there was some significant delays there.
And to speak to what our person in chat with Aaron Brooks, to speak to that, the Cyberpunk anger in the beginning, I really think that was more because people were expecting CD Projekt Red to release a product that was as high quality as Witcher.
Well, and the other thing, too, is when they announced, and I remember this distinctly, when they announced at the E3, they announced Cyberpunk 2077 many, many years ago. When they first announced it, they said released when it's ready, right? And that was the tagline for a long time. Is they were very public about the fact that they said, we will not release this stinking game until it's done, baked, fully. And so when it came out and had the launch issues that it did, on top of the fact that, again, everybody was expecting a Witcher game, the fact that they had made those pronouncements so distinctly made them look ridiculous. So, Yeah, I hope for the big ones it's not putting out crap. Nintendo, I'm sure that's the case. I'm sure they do not. Nintendo does not put out broken games. Not ever. They just don't. They're so particular about their stuff being perfect.
Yeah, for sure.
One of these I want to call out, Replaced, was delayed due to the war in neighboring Ukraine because they're a Belarusian studio, and obviously they took in a lot of refugees and stuff like that. So Warhammer 40K Dark Tide, that's a big delay too.
And Tip's absolutely right. Microsoft, Nintendo is far more QA heavy than Microsoft is.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Microsoft has pretty stringent guidelines, but Microsoft is so far and beyond that. Or sorry, Nintendo is so far and beyond Microsoft,
which is funny
in that way,
because they're right next door to each other, right? What most people don't like, their headquarters in Seattle are literally like Microsoft, Nintendo, like they're right there. It's hilarious. Nintendo is crazy QA heavy, and good for them. I mean, don't get me wrong. I like the fact that when I buy a Nintendo game and I get the little chippy for the Switch, I know it's going to work. It just is. Like, it's just going to function.
I mean, they have small bugs, and they certainly have downloadable patches. I mean, Animal Crossing's, it was patched more than once. But at the end of the day, the game that you get is going to be playable, and you're not going to be facing hard locks. You're not going to be facing system resets, and especially when you talk about their large franchises. I mean, like, imagine if one of their Pokemon games came out and the game was breaking, people were losing progress, losing Pokemon. I mean, people would be up in arms. Like, there would be a revolt.
Oh yeah. No, they would go bonkers. They would go bonkers. I think they might have moved some of their stuff. Their headquarters building, they still have a headquarters building in Redmond, next to good old Microsoft. Yeah, I said, a lot of this has got to be post-COVID.
And to be honest, like, I'm the type of person, especially now as I've gotten older, yes, I was looking forward to Starfield, but if they're gonna bump it out another year and it'll be better when they release it, like, take the time. I'm fine with it. I am not lacking anything to play.
Oh yeah, for sure.
My backlog never gets small. So it's not like if they miss their release date, I'm suddenly without. I'm adrift without anything to do.
Yeah. Also, you could win a Starfield, because how much time will you probably spend in that character editor?
Oh dear Lord, let's not talk about like, we could take a whole episode, like, with my obsession with character generation.
So let's hope that they're just not putting out half-baked games. And yeah, let's hope that everybody can kind of get back on track. I agree with Michael. I think it's probably going to be middle of next year before we see things really start to, like, cement back into stuff. I think we're going to get a lot of updates next year, because I know there's a lot of stuff that's cooking right now in the video game world. There's a bunch of Star Wars games, right?
Yeah.
Like, that I'm like, come on, let's go. That we're not hearing much about, because I'm sure, like I said, they're getting a lot of post-COVID delays. So here's the hope in 2023. However, if this is the case, 2023 is going to be a bonkers year for gaming.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
Backlogs are going to be terrible next year. Oh my God. It's going to be so hard.
Again, backlogs aren't getting any better. Especially as you get older as an adult, it's not like, again, you don't get less things to play.
Well, and the other thing on the backfield, and I'm curious about this, and I don't know enough about the video game industry, but I know this is the case in the movie industry right now. They're having backlogs because there's only so many special effects houses.
Yeah.
And because there's so many special effects heavy movies for theatrical release, like, the special effects houses just cannot keep up with the workload, period. They just can't do it. In the chat.
Oh, Tip. Yes, I'm
Fallen
so
Order
looking
2.
forward to Fallen Order 2 is I'm so ready for that.
That game
was so good.
I had a blast with Fallen Order 1. I would say it was about 3 hours shorter than I wanted it to be.
For sure.
There was also a couple of points where I was like, okay, I'm tired of wandering through. Like, I want more city in Star Wars, less wilderness. Like, Kashyyyk started to get a little draggy for me toward the end.
But again, it's the nature of that whole kind of Metroidvania, explore the level 4 or 5 times to get everything.
I know,
but I'll tell you what, BD1 is in my top 5 droids of all time, maybe even top 3. I love that little thing.
That's fair. A couple weeks we'll have to do a Andor series recap episode, speaking of Star Wars. So that's it on video game delays. There's a bunch of them. Like I said, 2023, it looks like it's going to be an insane year for video games. Get your wallets ready, folks.